I think I'm live. I'm not sure because I can see myself in the corner,
Yeah. We are.
but I
I was
can't
just
see
waiting
you.
for it to show me that it was live. Gosh, what
I
in
feel
the
like I have this
hell?
deer in headlights look. Okay, there you
Yeah,
are.
goodness gracious! Like, why in the world is this thing at? Ugh, gosh, technology. It only works when you really want it, when you don't need it to. But then when you really need it to, at that point in time, it doesn't want to work. So, damn technology. Hi, nice to meet you all.
Hi, JB.
Good to
It's been a
see
long time. I've
everybody.
interacted with you so much, but this is the second time I'm talking to you on video. And it's
Yeah,
almost like a real life meeting post pandemic to meet people on live or on Zoom.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And I just I just want to say hello to everybody who is watching today. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. Just to let you guys know, the Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts, so you can subscribe there. Please make sure to also watch us on the Revolutionary Blackout Network, which I'm also a part of. You can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and on the Roundtable on Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you like what you're hearing. And if you are new to the channel, please take that sexy thumb and press the subscribe button. If you promise, if you do, I promise I'll give you cookies or brownies or something more lucrative worth your while. That if I can give it through the screen. I'd like to give a shout out to my patrons on Patreon as well as my patrons on Coffee. Just to let you guys know, you guys definitely keep the lights on, and I'm very deeply humbled and grateful for your support. Thank you so much. And also, remember, I'm also available on Rumble as well. So if you guys would like to catch me on there, guys can catch me on Rumble as well. So
You're on all of them. Spotify and YouTube and Rumble. And which ones did I miss?
Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts.
Google Podcast, Apple Podcast.
Anchor, of course. I'm trying to get on Rockfin, but I'm waiting until I get 1,000 subs, which is about 19 subs away. So once I hit 1,000, I'm gonna be knocking on Rockfin's door and be like, "Hey, can I join?" I just joined Rumble. I probably think about.
Everybody help JB get to 1,000 subs, because once you get monetized on YouTube, my understanding is that you can earn money a little bit from ads. And even though it's annoying to watch ads, it's better than paying. So help JB to get to 1,000 subs.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And you too. I think you should be way over and above that by now, because but
yeah, I also don't stream regularly enough. Like, I have mixed feelings about how much energy to put. You know what I mean?
Oh, I got you. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's because I'm disabled. And I have, I kind of have the time, kind of don't have the time, because I have my dialysis. So, I do it more. I try to be as regularly and consistent as possible. Because it's better for me, because I have a consistent dialysis schedule. So it kind of forces me to be more.
3 times a week?
Yeah, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday.
That's painful.
It's not
painful. I had a good friend that went through dialysis, and it was really hard.
Yeah, it's not painful. It's just really exhausting.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if you want to count the needle sticks every other day.
He had a transplant, like an organ transplant. Do you need an organ transplant? Or are you okay with dialysis? Are you on a list?
Not yet. I have to qualify to get on the list, and there's a bunch of different things you have to qualify to get on the list. So I have to do that first, which I am working on. It's just easier said than done. But Yes, as far as a kidney transplant, I actually do need one. Yeah. Um, and like I say in a lot of different panels, especially disability panels, um, I have what's called an invisible disability. So if you just see me walking down the street, you wouldn't know that I'm disabled because mine isn't a mobile disability. Uh, um, it's not a motor disability. So for people, it's like, well, what's wrong with you? And it's like, well, there's a lot. But
Kidney dialysis. That's a serious thing because I do see people like kind of stretch out their suffering to like exaggerate a little bit sometimes, but kidney dialysis is it's very it's a very serious condition.
I mean, if you want to gauge the seriousness of it, if I skip dialysis for 2 to 3 weeks, I would die.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's kind of serious because it sustains me living.
It's serious.
Kind of serious. And there's a lot because
and actually, even after you get your transplant, I'm sorry, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to.
No, it's all good. Yeah, it's all good. You can talk about it.
So yeah, after you get my friend that got an organ transplant, after he got his transplant, his body rejected the organ. It took like 2 years. Like he had it for 2 years, it was fine. But like recently his body rejected the organ and now he's back at the hospital because like his body rejected it.
Yeah. So with organ transplants, you have to be put on what's called immunosuppressive medication. And that suppresses the immune system, but it also is a protection against your body rejecting it. So these are these anti-rejection medications that you have to be on, which are extremely expensive, by the way. And it's not necessarily a guarantee that once you are transplanted that it will keep. Also, you have to stay away from certain things. Like there's certain foods. Like one of the things I found out, like I have to stay away from ginger ale once I have a transplant because it interacts with the anti-rejection medication.
Oh, so, and he had a diet that it was like the craziest thing I've ever seen. And it was like he had to eat low potassium foods or something. Do you have to do that? And it was like some things are good, but like strawberries are bad. It was like the most random, like things that you think like I thought were healthy. His body just can't handle them.
For a dialysis patient, it depends. High potassium foods can be dangerous because the potassium actually affects the electrical workings of your heart. So you can't have too high of a potassium. But also you can't have too high of a phosphorus as well. So your ability to be able to filter out phosphorus is diminished when your kidney function goes down. And so because of that, I can't have high phosphorus foods as well as high potassium foods. I can do it once in a while because my potassium is pretty much, for the most part, good as far as labs are concerned. But for phosphorus and things like that, it's kind of But yeah, it's pretty tough because, like I have to stay away from dairy because that's high in phosphorus. I have to stay away from a lot of like things like whole wheat bread, brown rice, oatmeal, stuff like that. I actually have to stay away from, which is wild. Yeah. So, I mean, and then there's certain fruits and things like that I can't have too much of. So like bananas, potatoes, tomatoes, things like that. So, but yeah.
Yeah. He's one of the rare cases. Like he did have this kind of reaction to the pandemic where it was like, I'm never going outdoors again and all of this stuff. And it's like, okay, but in cases like that, he was on immunosuppressant medication. So it was like, well, what are you supposed to do? Like, if you're in a situation like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, even those of us who are on dialysis, our immune systems are compromised. We're immunosuppressed. So I'm immunosuppressed because I'm on dialysis. So whether you're on dialysis or whether you have a transplant, your immune system is going to be lower than everybody else's. So you have to take those precautions. even if, like, for instance, I'm in the state of Florida, since mask mandates were never really a thing here in Florida, everywhere I go, I wear a mask. Even if everybody else isn't wearing one, I'm wearing one. So I have to make sure and be cognizant of that. Did I get the jab? I should say, yes, I did. Did I get the boosters? No, I'm not getting the boosters. Because
I think a lot of us, like, I did that too. I got it on the chance that it would work, basically, and then when, like, the more information came out about it, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have gotten it, but it's over.
I mean, I'm not either regretful or thankful. I'm just like, meh, when it comes to it.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
When it comes to, like, the boosters and stuff, I'm like, I'll be honest with you. If it were the Cuban vaccine, I would have took it like that. Like, I would have been, like, first in line, because I know that, it's not being projected by a big pharma, but at the same time, I mean, if it does help in some way, shape, or form, okay, I'm cool with that. It's just, I'm kind of in the middle, between everybody else, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so this is going to be an interesting conversation. We were talking about housing in DM and between each other, and you were talking about housing, and recently this has actually came up for me, as you saw on Twitter, about housing and how it is kind of it's been a rough couple of days for me. Feelings of anxiety and things like that over housing. So it's just been a wild ride. And so for people who don't know, or they're not as housing insecure, you don't truly realize the amount of anxiousness and stress that comes over you when that insecurity of housing comes into play. Your thoughts?
So yeah, so I'm actually housing secure right now. I have a small apartment. However, like, I grew up very housing insecure.
Mm-hmm.
We were on, like, this kind of Section 8 voucher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I was a kid, we were on the Section 8, and that we were lucky to be on that, actually, because there's a waiting line for those vouchers now that's like 20 years long.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I noticed is that just with the amount you spend on rent, you would say, like, some people spend that on their mortgages, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like people aren't spending money. It's not like they're not working. It's not like they're not paying into the system. But it's just, there's lots of reasons why people just, like, they don't have any access to home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with mutual aid, and I'm not saying it's bad to participate in mutual aid, like, if you can help someone make it to the end of the month or whatever. But, like, one of the things that I was thinking that I've thought about is every time you help someone with mutual aid to, like, maybe make it to the end of the month, or, like a temporary solution, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if we used those dollars for a land trust? What if we pooled that money for an actual, like a tenant union, or like a co-op, some kind of co-op, or something like this? Like, obviously we're not going to solve everyone's problems, but wouldn't it be better if we solved one person's problem over nobody's problem? Like, so I don't know. I've thought about that a lot, because I'm actually in a co-op, like a co-op now. Like I bought an apartment in a co-op.
Oh.
And I I was very heavily indebted when I bought it, actually, because I have a lot of student debt. So I tried to get a loan, and I was rejected from nearly every bank I applied to. And when I was doing that, I kind of came up with a little project called Housing Match, which I like made a little logo for and everything, and I tried to pitch it at these startup events, which was completely unsuccessful. Because like at the time I thought that you could kind of independently do something, until I realized this is a political project. It's not really like, you know,
I got you.
nobody's going to invest in it. But there's like so many reasons why people can't have access to housing, and only one of them is actually money. Like there's so many roadblocks to home ownership or even like housing stability, right?
Yeah.
And I talked to different people, like, you know, would you form part? And there were so many reasons for why people don't buy a home. You know, like only one of them is actually money. Sometimes it's money,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just money. Other times it's like people have money, but they can't get a loan because they don't have credit. They don't have good credit for whatever reason. It could be student loans. It could be a criminal record. It could be like not having a stable job, but having money, some like maybe you earn money cash, but you don't have a stable job on the record that you can like actually qualify for a home loan. And then there's also immigration. Like there's like a huge connection actually right now between immigration. The fact that there's no path to immigration is actually a huge reason why the housing market is very suppressed right now. There's not enough buyers. Because people are saving their money. They don't want to invest in the country because they're worried that their home will be taken from them. So they just send their money abroad.
Yeah.
So like that's another big one. And then I was like trying to get people together to see if like people would invest in some kind of cooperative. And I met cleaning ladies with like $100K under their bed, but like they don't want to buy a house because they can't invest in this country. Like they're not.
What?
You know? Yes. So you know, like there's a lot of like structural stuff that's like preventing people, like student loans, immigration, criminal records, like lots of things that prevent people from getting a loan. And only one of those things is actually money. So like, you know, like money is definitely a big block. I'm not saying it's not, but like the more I kind of investigated this issue, the more I was like, whoa, like the money is actually there. The organization is lacking a little bit, and all, you know, like obviously it would be better to have more money, but like it's actually surprising how much money there is, and how many other barriers they kind of put in our way so that like we can't have full access to housing.
Yeah. I mean, look, there's a lot of people. There's some people who don't have housing. They couldn't even get an apartment. It's not because they don't have enough money, but because the apartment complex did a credit check and they were denied. And so they're like, I have the amount of money for rent. It's just I can't pass a credit check.
Right.
It's like, really?
Yes.
and I honestly did the math. Over the last, just where I live currently, I've been here for almost 9 years. And I've calculated basically the amount of rent from when I first moved in up until now. It's well over $100,000 in rent that I have paid to this place in over 9 years. I'm sorry, in almost 9 years. And yet, that didn't go to a mortgage on a house. That went straight into a landlord's pockets. $100,000.
Yeah.
That we have paid. And it's crazy because I can never call this place my own. And the HOA owns my apartment, my condo. The HOA owns it. So guess what? And the rent is about to go up because I was told by the HOA president. And I can barely afford where I'm living at right now. And when I say barely, I mean my income, 95% of it goes towards rent. 95%. People are balking at like 50% of your money goes towards rent. Mine is 95. Which means that my mom, who lives with me, has to pick up everything else. And the only reason why we're able to survive is because, number one, I got to GoFundMe. Number two, people will randomly send money to either my Patreon or my Cash App or my Venmo. That's it. That's basically how I'm surviving. And I can't get on Section 8 because they're not taking applications, and the list is also 5 years long.
Yeah.
So you're like,
that's what I was like all this time that I thought I had it bad because I grew up on Section 8, and now they're not taking applications anymore. So it's beyond ridiculous at this point.
yeah. So
and Section 8, it's completely full, by the way, of not even poor families, lower middle class families. You know, people that should also have access to having a home. Like there's like nurses in there and people people don't understand that how many not even poor families are on Section 8 because just because the price of life in these big cities and stuff is so outrageous that there's just no other option.
Yeah. And for many of us who are barely hanging on, it's like, what do you want us to do? Like, I even told that to the HOA president. I was like, so, we're both on fixed incomes. We're barely surviving. And you're going to raise the rent again. Mind you, these raising rents aren't like, $5, $15, $20 each year. No, we're talking about $100, $150 per year.
And here's another thing. I'm not even that critical of the small landlords because I've seen small landlords go broke during this pandemic. They also raise the taxes on these properties to levels that are completely unsustainable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's a cycle. And I mean, even when it comes to states, they want to cut these taxes on rich people when that could actually, cover the backlog of taxes that are needed for instead of raising the property taxes on these people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a fan of landlords at all. But this would give them less of an excuse to raise my rent.
Right.
So it's just, there's so much going on right now that it feels like there is this action of eugenics against those of us who are poor within the country. It feels like we're seriously under attack. Because it's you don't produce like everybody else. Okay, we got to get rid of you somehow. So we're just going to phase you out of existence. And that's what it feels like.
The reaction to the pandemic was the most striking thing to me because they admitted, they came out with the research and with the statistics that the people that were dying the most are people that are housing unstable. Why? If you have so little space, you have so many people living in your house, or you're in a homeless shelter or on the street or whatever. But a lot of the time it's just people living on the couch, people just in tight living quarters. And that's a large part of the population that doesn't even include the homeless.
Yeah.
That makes you so much more likely. It made you so much more likely to catch coronavirus, to spread it to your entire family, friends, whatever. And the only thing these shitlibs got out of that was wear your mask and get away from me. What happened to the conversation about housing, about how housing was the biggest issue in terms of not spreading this disease or any disease. You know, like we need to have housing because you can't self-isolate without housing. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's just like, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah. I mean, you can't quarantine.
And not just housing, good housing.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't quarantine if you're a family of 4 and you're living in a motel room.
Yeah.
You can't. And you got some people, you know, who like,
or if you have, you know, like like the way I grew up, like I like for a large portion of like all my college years, my mother was in my room, I was on the couch, like we had a renter, and then there was like somebody else living on the balcony. You know? It was like a closed balcony, you know, like so like, and I spent many years of my life like this. It's not, and I was never homeless. So like, you know, and I think it's pretty common.
Yeah, it's wild. Like you have people who have more than one home, and then you get people who literally are sleeping on somebody's couch. And here's the crazy part: a lot of them, they have jobs, they're working, and they can't afford to live on their own.
Well, you know, like back when my husband worked at a restaurant, a lot of the delivery guys there, they made like, you know, $2,000 a month, whatever, but they didn't want to spend it on rent. They chose to live at the homeless shelter because they either couldn't find a home that would like let them pass all their credit checks or whatever, or they didn't want to spend their entire income on rent.
Yeah. Because once all your income is spent on rent, what do you have for food, clothing, travel, you know, transportation? You can't. You have to have internet. You can't go without internet. And some of us, we don't. If you don't have a home, then the only internet that you have is your phone. So guess what? You have to have a phone in order to be able to operate, because at least you have your internet there. So then if you're spending it all on rent, then you don't have anything else. And it's like, and some people just don't get it. And this is one of the reasons why, you know, I was as emotional as I was the week before, because the thing is a lot of times we're constantly told, you know, just vote for the next progressive. And it's like, well, voting for the next progressive isn't going to cut my rent next month.
We definitely need to, I don't know, like, I don't know how we would go about it. I know that there's a lot of land trusts like around the country that try to get people to, but I do think that it's worth talking a little bit more online, seeing if anything materializes. Yeah. Because like, let me just give you an example. Like an example is that these landlords and banks and stuff, they pool their money to buy housing and to buy land. And we do not. That's like another thing too. Like we think of home ownership as like something that you do maybe like after you get married and have a kid and have some kind of like great job.
Yeah.
But like these landlords, like for example, in New York City, one of the biggest buyers of like apartments and stuff is New York Life Insurance. And do you know that they get loans for whatever they want to buy on faith? Just on faith. They're given credit because people trust that company to pay the money back. Yeah. So they don't pay $1 to buy anything. And like we're like so wary of like pooling money to buy something because like we're worried, and this is a valid worry, I think, that like some like grifter will like come and like, you know, take all the money. Like, you know, like what happened with like many social movements where like people like the BLM activists that bought that $7 million house like somewhere in a rich neighborhood.
Yeah.
But that's a $7 million house. Like, I don't think it would be a waste to spend $40,000 and like, you know, try to pull $40,000. You can definitely you can definitely like try to pool a few $1,000s and even pool it with someone that has already saved their down payment and doesn't have access to credit.
Yeah.
Or someone that does have access to credit and doesn't have a down payment or something like that. Because I feel like it's still important to own something. You know, like I know it's becoming more and more unachievable for most people, but like the 1%, they're like acquiring land and homes, and they're saying that now that there's going to be like a food shortage because Bill Gates bought all the farmland or something, and there's been all of these fires at like food supply distributors and stuff. But they're buying land. So what are we gonna do? Are we just gonna like sit down as like they just like take all the land and all the housing? Like, I don't know. It just seems a little, that's what's defeatist to me. Like not voting for the Democratic Party, just like watching these people just like take all the land and all the housing, and then we're just like supposed to survive off, you know, like renting and like crumbs.
Yeah. Like, it's pretty scary, about how they're basically taking the ownership of pretty much a limited resource. Like, there's only so much land on this planet. And so, and I said this a while back, before I even came into this this commentator space, the person who owns the land, they are basically the person that basically controls everything. So it's the same thing. If you get to a point where you start to own all the land on the planet, everyone is subject to you. And you may not be the president or the prime minister or somebody like that, but they're still subject to you. And the crazy and scariest part is they're buying up so much land that now it's going to make the United States government, well, they already are, but even more subject to these people. Because now the United States government is basically saying, okay, well, you have all this, so we as politicians, we got to obey what you say. Because who ran the, and really, what difference is it between now and back then when this country was first formed? What? Because I mean, it was basically written for wealthy white, land owning men. That's what basically this
country. It's always been about land.
Yeah, it's always been about land. It's never been about anything. Because when you have land, then you have access to the resources within that land. Whether it's gold, whether it's lithium, iron, oil, whether it's, tobacco, cotton, rice, whatever it is, if you have it within that land, you have those resources are yours. And, you have a lot of people who aren't really paying that much attention. I mean, the fact that BlackRock is buying all these homes all over the country, and the fact that Bill Gates is now the largest owner of farmland, which is our food supply in the nation, should really freak you out. Like, what?
It really freaks me out, actually.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, it's really frightening.
Yeah. And there was a man, I should pull it up on here. But there was a TikTok where somebody made, and they did the calculations, and basically we are now making less than what they did during the Great Depression.
That's crazy.
Yeah, in the Great Depression, they had an unemployment rate of 25%, right? What is ours at? And then what is, and the ratio is gone out of whack when it comes to, the wealth gap. Because It was super wide during the Great Depression. Then, because of the laws and labor laws, things like that set in place, it started to narrow it back down. And then, guess what? Because I credit this to capitalism, it went wider back again. Next thing you know, now it's even wider than it was before. And you got people who are sitting here simping for billionaires. Like, I can't, for the look, get your lips off of Elon Musk's ass, people. I'm sorry. Stop kissing his ass. Him owning Twitter is not going to do shit for free speech. Because guess what? If he truly was for free speech, he also would have been for unions, but he's anti-union, which means that he doesn't believe in workers having an actual voice. So people need to lay off of simping for billionaires, because they're not good people just because they have a lot of money. And people, and this annoys me to no end when people, they will praise billionaires for being super rich, but they don't question them how they get their money. But somebody can sell some weed on the corner, and then they're like, "Oh no, that's drug money." Like, who do you think the Purdue family is?
Well, Elon Musk's dad owned a mine.
Weed on the corner.
Yeah.
Gosh, don't get me started, Lucy.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot to say there.
Yeah.
I'm not even the best person to say it about Elon Musk's background.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even really look into it that much, honestly, but there's some stuff there.
Oh, there's some stuff. There's some stuff. Yeah.
So I actually I wanted to send this guy. He works for a nonprofit in my area, and they have a land trust.
Oh, okay.
And they have a successful land trust. They've managed to put together a bunch of buildings. It's not the ultimate solution because they haven't been able to create loads of buildings,
Mm-hmm.
But they do have a land trust, and they do a lot of actions over stuff. I'm sure you see it in your area. Like, for example, there's lots of vacant lots everywhere.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're kind of unused, or sometimes it's like a former business that went bankrupt and then the property just stands there. It's bank owned,
Mm-hmm.
or it's government owned and it's not being really put to use. So they'll kind of go to these vacant lots and they'll have a little rally or something, or they'll ask their local politicians to turn over the land to them so that they can do something with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is kind of a really productive, honestly, it's what I was most familiar with, the kind of I was never an activist, but it's the kind of thing that I would see and go to that I was most familiar with, these kind of small land actions.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think these kinds of channels, think about all of the money that we donated to Bernie Sanders, $100 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I would love that. If there was some kind of plan where I could put $100 a month and it would go to an actual project that I could see at the end of the year, where we were able to house 10 homeless families or something. It might not be a lot of people, but I think I would like to see something. You know what I mean? I don't know.
No, I mean, look, it's basically a form of mutual aid, instead of investing all this money into politicians. Imagine how many land trusts could have been bought with all the money that was contributed to politicians in 2020.
And some of this farmland is not even that expensive. You can buy a little plot for $5,000
Wow.
in some remote part of the country. Even in upstate New York, there's stuff like this.
Yeah.
Now the price is going up. Why? Because these billionaires are monopolizing all of the land. The more land they own, the higher the price they have on getting rid of any of it.
Yeah.
So it kind of compounds the problem.
Yeah. I'm showing the definition of what a land trust is. because some people may not know exactly what it is. This is from Wikipedia. It says land trusts are nonprofit organizations which own and manage land and sometimes waters. There are three common types of land trusts distinguished from one another by the ways in which they are legally structured, by the purposes of which they are organized and operated. So it goes over the three different types. You have real estate investment, community land trust, and conservation land trust. I think what you're referring to is probably a community land trust. It says it's a private nonprofit corporation that acquires, manages, and develops lands for a variety of purposes, primarily for production and stewardship of affordable housing, although many CLTs are also engaged in non-residential buildings and uses. But yeah, so I mean, you can basically build housing on it, so that people don't have to go without housing, or you can make it extremely affordable for people who have it. And this goes over the different land trusts over history. But yeah, I mean, why isn't this also a conversation? Because so many people, have gone without it. But I think part of it is contributed to, we also have we have a lack of economic literacy in this country. Because, and I think that's on purpose too. Because if you don't know economic literacy, as some people call financial literacy, then that means that you don't know how to do what the rich do in order to take back the power from them. Because if you don't know, then you can't do it. It's basically this kind of the same framing as, during chattel slavery, where you couldn't learn how to read and write, because if you learn how to read and write, then you would know, how to do certain things in order to get away or to overthrow slave masters. You would learn these things, but you don't. And so, or you wouldn't be inspired by different revolutionary thoughts. So it's the same thing with economic type of literacy. Is once you learn how the rich actually, operate these things, maybe you can wrestle it away collectively and be able to be a force, against them. But they don't want you to know these things.
Yeah, they don't want you to. By the way, I feel like a lot of the marketing around the American dream and stuff like that, it's almost like serving to distract from the things that have actually made people money, and like making you feel like a loser for like not being able to do things alone. Kind of, if that makes sense, because like the communal history of America, like the first land trust, it was that they were actually founded by Black people. I don't know the exact history. I feel I am unprepared. I should have brought the video, because they showed us these videos of like the actual history of land trusts in the South, like in the beginning of this century. But basically, the ways that people were able to hold on to money and like become part of the middle class are a far cry from what you see, like what you're propagandized with at school. Like finish your degree, get a good job, like get married, get a loan from the bank to get a mortgage. Like that's not how it worked. Like people really did pool money together for these land trusts, and like they had kind of a cooperative housing model that, by the way, the capitalists, like the landowners, landlords, they tried to intervene and like destroyed a lot of these neighborhoods that were previously doing pretty well, because like people like learned how to band together their resources. And in immigrant communities, it was the same. Like, like when the Irish, the Italians came here or whatever, they pooled their money and they bought land and they built it themselves. Like they laid the bricks and like pitched in and like helped their neighbor or whatever. So it's not like it doesn't even really matter what community you're part of. Like everybody had some kind of communal housing model that kind of reflected something similar to a land trust. Maybe it was like based off of family ties and not an official land trust. But the interesting thing with housing nowadays is that there's a lot of regulation, like a lot of regulation on what you can build, how you can build it, whether it like complies to code and all of this stuff. And I think part of that is for safety. Like it's a genuine concern for safety because there have been like fires and like accidents and stuff like that in non-regulated buildings. But I do think a lot of it too is like a lot of the safety regulations nowadays is like kind of the left and the so-called left govern part of the government and the so-called right kind of banding together to make sure that you have like no opportunity to build something for yourself. Which is interesting. And what's even crazier is that that's part of why the homelessness rate in America is higher than countries that are even more poor. Because in other countries, you go to other countries, they have less regulation. So the conditions might be terrible, but maybe they'll like start up with a little shack somewhere and then they add to it. And then eventually like they're able to formalize a real home. Like actually, like slowly build up. Whereas here, there's an active campaign to clear homeless people out of everything. And there's also an active campaign to like fine you and penalize you and do everything that they can to make you pay if you're just like a middle-class person that's like trying to add an addition to your home or something. Yeah. So there's a lot there, but like for those reasons, like it would have to be an official land trust because like they've already figured out all of these ways to pile on all of these penalties and like this and that to really drive people crazy. Like you can't just like the people that most benefited from building up their own wealth in this way were people that built up their homes before 1960, like before there were this many regulations. Yeah. And if you look at homes that are built before the 60s, it's like and there's like an extra step or something that prevents a disabled person from going into the house. You're not gonna like those people aren't gonna get fined for that because they built up their wealth before 1960. So there's a lot there, and this isn't to say that like I wouldn't like to have fully accessible buildings or homes or whatever, but all I'm saying is like to beware that like the landlords and the 1% are kind of using all of these social justice issues to penalize like working people that are just trying to like cobble something together.
Yeah, I mean, there are some issues that should still be enforced because regulation, but there are some barriers that are used to prevent people from doing things. Like, for instance, I know of, I remember a story where this guy used his front yard to build, instead of having a lawn, he had a garden. And the HOA did not like that he had a garden in his front yard.
They don't want you growing food on your front lawn.
Yeah. So they went to the city, and the city basically fined him for having a garden in his front yard. It's like, but I thought that's his property. Now that type of regulation, I'm like, no. You don't do that. Like the guy's literally growing food. What's wrong with that? Right?
There's all these rules everywhere.
Yeah. And it's things like that prevents things like that. That's what I don't agree with. Now if you built your house in the 1960s and or not even a house. If there's a building that was built in the 1960s, you don't have, ADA approved like entrances and stuff like that, you need to change that. And especially if you have that wealth built, you can afford it. You can do it. But
well, if you can afford it, do it for sure. But a lot of people can't afford it.
Yeah, and I maybe I'm crazy for this, but I think there should be a subsidy for that. To help people who can't afford it. But even still, I mean, people don't have access to this primarily because they're locked out. There's a gatekeeping going on. And I think this is, basically what you're saying is the gatekeeping is extreme to the point where you have more, we're going to have a nation of renters. And it's going to be dangerous because you basically have to depend even more. Not only now are we dependent on these billionaires for work, but now we have to depend on them on where to live and how to live. And people don't realize that that's the control that people are always talking about they're afraid of. The control of the government. But the thing is that they don't realize that the government is ran by the corporations. So that essentially is the government. Because you handed that to the corporations.
Yeah. I'm looking at some of the comments are the best. Some of the comments.
Oh, yeah. The Jaybefaunt show audience is always on point. Yeah. Bryce said, how dare we want things? It's true. It's like, how dare you actually want to have your own home? And how dare you want to grow a garden in your front yard? Like, how dare you? How dare you want to sustain your life by not having to buy food at the grocery store all the time?
Yeah. And, I think part of the reason I like this idea of land trust so much is because even though I'm not really a practical person, like I like to feel like, like I could try something practical.
Yeah.
Something like Medicare for all. Like I can protest for it, I can advocate for it, whatever, but it's like a little bit out of my control. Something like ending the wars, I hope someday it happens. You know what I mean? But like, no matter how much I protest, it seems like it's a little bit out of my control. Do you hear my dogs?
Yeah, but
I'm sorry. It's like every time somebody rings the doorbell downstairs, they have to do the announcement.
I got you.
But I feel like a lot of these, like cooperative housing models and stuff, like people did it in New York City all the time. Actually, part of the conversation, like I started because Unholy Rome was talking about how he showed up in New York City and like nobody showed up at his action. And it is kind of a very big, like very heartless city, right? But a lot of that is also like it's not always that way. It's just that like New York is kind of, it's like the center of capitalism. Like Wall Street is like right downtown. And in the 80s, like people did try to buy up vacant housing and stuff like that. And try to convert it. And like there was there's always kind of been a little bit of a housing like tenant kind of movement in New York City. But it doesn't take like it gets co-opted, and what ended up happening is that a lot of these like vacant buildings that people tried to take over is the drug epidemic happened. And I don't think it's too coincidental that the the junkies and like all of these like problems started to invade the housing that people were trying to cooperatively own.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like people will talk about the racism aspect or the fact that you know, they let crack loose into the Black community, but I don't think people really talk about the economic aspect, like the fact that when these drugs like were unleashed in, you know, low income communities, whatever, people were already there. They were like trying to build things up. They were trying to cooperatively like fix up homes and like own something for themselves. And like my parents in the 80s, they tried to participate in one of those projects and they eventually abandoned it because there were too many junkies. Like there were too many junkies in the area and they didn't feel like it was safe to like, you know, go in there and like fix up a home that was getting like, you know, basically like infested with drugs.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Like, I don't think it's too much of a coincidence. I think that these things kind of, maybe I'm a little paranoid too, but you know, I don't think it's paranoia even. Like, there's documentations and stuff about how like the FBI, you know, like all of these. Sorry, I have like my phone is going off for some reason. They tried to kind of infiltrate movements by releasing drugs into the population, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean,
You know?
it was through that in the CIA. So what they were doing was they were actually taking a lot of the times they were taking crack and cocaine, inserting it into Black neighborhoods. And what they would do is that they would use the sale of the crack cocaine during the crack cocaine epidemic in order to also have coups down in South American countries. So they're basically funding imperialism through the sale of crack cocaine in our neighborhoods, which is crazy. And then on top of it, what they did was they also used that to grow the population of the prison population, which basically is legalized slavery, because if you look at the 13th Amendment, there's an exception in the clause that says that they can still be in prison, they can still be enslaved. So because of doing that, then they also increase the slave population in our private prisons so that they can continue to create more without having to pay people. And then on top of it, because of that, they created a system of people needing to commit crimes of opportunity and desperation in order to survive, which means that our police actually went up, which means that it became unsafe in these neighborhoods because people were doing these crimes of opportunity and desperation in order to survive. So because of that, then it made it unsafe or it made it unsafe to actually invest in a home in these areas. So then you have more vacant homes, and then people were becoming overly addicted to these drugs, creating an epidemic. And so, and then on top of it, they treat it as a criminal issue instead of a medical issue because they created that medical issue, but they treated it criminally. And then guess what? They started arresting more people for drug possession and whatnot. And so then you created this entire ecosystem just so that you can basically, and I'm going to say it, bring us back into slavery. That's basically what it was. It's like, okay, you guys got away, but guess what? We're going to bring you guys back in by hell or high water. And that's exactly what they did. So now we have a nation where we have the largest prison population in the world, 40% of which is Black. By the way, we're only 13% of the entire population in the United States. So when people talk about, oh, that's just a conspiracy, it's like, no, the documentation is right there. And so when we talk about it, people think we're crazy. And then, and then when we say, in so many words, divest the money from police departments, put them back into the communities, and then also end the drug war so that you can build these communities back up so that they can prosper, then it's like, well, I don't know if we can do that. And then we call it by a different name, defund the police. Oh my God, you guys are going to cause crime everywhere. And it's like, well, wait, no, we had to get your attention. So divest from the militarized police in order to build up our neighborhood so we can have a nice neighborhood again. But apparently it's just too much.
Yeah, and I think Robin Ryan says, this was a good. It was later learned that the cops encouraged mental health providers to forward folks to the Occupy camps for help. I think he's talking about the Occupy camps. Can you believe that? The Occupy Wall Street.
I'm trying to look for a comment.
I thought that was interesting. So the cops were encouraging the mental health providers to forward people with problems to the Occupy camps.
Wow.
Because that's the thing, like they'll ruin activist movements like this too. They'll just like pile on so much responsibility to people that are just doing this part-time or like in their extra hours, whatever, that can't take on all that responsibility. It's very stressful, actually. Like, you know, like I know people are like will be critical like of you if you're not doing the work, but I saw Sabby tweet the other day that she went to that event and they didn't have enough tents. Mm-hmm. For the like people were asking for tents because and there weren't enough tents, and it's like it's stressful once you try to start doing something and you're faced with the fact that there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, and it can be very emotionally daunting because then you see people who need help and there's only so much you can do. I have a little, it's a small story, but when Rome was down here for Tour for the Poor in Orlando, we went to Little Caesars to hand out pizzas, you know, on the street. And while we were out there was this gentleman. And of course he looked very disheveled. And when you say this guy was poor, this guy shoes were ripped apart. He didn't have a belt, so he was holding up his pants. And he was like, "Can I have some pizza?" And of course, we gave it to him. He comes back a second time. "Can I have some more?" Okay, give him some. Comes back a third time. "Can I have some more?" Goes back and eats some more. Comes back a fourth time. This guy literally ate about 2 boxes of the pizza that we had by himself. And I just felt bad because that's probably the biggest meal he's had in a long time. And then on top of it, he wasn't even the only person that broke my heart seeing that day. I literally saw a family of 6. A mother and a father with 4 kids. The youngest one was still in a stroller. And they had no place to go. So you feel this powerlessness because you see people out on the street. And then the shelters that are supposedly religious don't do anything for them. And then people want to come after me when I attack Elon Musk for not ending homelessness instead of buying Twitter. They're like, "Oh, it's not his responsibility." Oh, really? It's not his responsibility? So all the public money that he took from our government in order to build up his little pet projects, that means that it's not our money? Please. No. Every single cent that he got is ours. It's ours. And I honestly, I hold that right to be able to tell him what he should do. All right, instead of buying Twitter, go ahead, end homelessness. In fact, I'm saving you $20 billion of your money. and instead just in homelessness. Because it's literally $20 billion, no, 20, $24 billion cheaper than buying Twitter. And yet, I'm the enemy. And people are like, it's not his responsibility. No, you're damn right. The thing is that everybody wants to, and everybody takes this individualistic type of spin on it, like it's not their responsibility. We have a responsibility to one another on this entire planet because we're all connected somehow, some way. And it's for the life of me, I get pissed off when everybody talks about personal responsibility, but nobody ever wants to talk about community responsibility. Nobody ever wants to talk about our duty to make sure that our environment is as healthy as it can be so that it can sustain us for the rest of our lives. You know, people, because if we want to go individualistic, then the hell with, the Amazon rainforest, the hell with the Great Barrier Reef, individual responsibility, right?
Speaking of the Amazon rainforest, that's like another thing. You could, with like our currency, even if we don't have a lot of money, we could connect to organizers in other countries. Why not? And get a small plot of land so that people plant trees only there. There's a lot of stuff that you can kind of do like outside of politics. And then, you could make it like a little vacation place that people could go to, like people that donated to the project. I don't know. I'm just like saying random shit, but
it's good random shit.
It is random shit, but like for example, in Argentina, there's a forest. It's not the rainforest; it's a dry forest. It's one of it's like one of the most deforested places in the world right now. Wow. Because what they did, basically local farmers in coordination with foreign capital and also Chinese capital. Like people want to act like China's like this kind of communist, great haven. Like cooperated all together to turn like the whole country into basically the land of soy. Like soy for consumption in China, for regular consumption of soy, and also for like beef. And they chopped down a ton of forests to do this. And now it's like one of the most like countries with the most land. There's like a lot of land compared to the amount of people. Now people are saying they don't have enough land to make all of the food that they need to survive because the food is being exported. Wow. So it's crazy because it's like and those are places that are land rich that you could invest in a plot of land and you could use it to start like feeding people locally and abroad, because that's how that land is already used. It's not just used to feed people locally. It's used to as food for export to the United States even. So I don't know, like there's a lot to be done like that, and I feel very powerless to do it because like honestly I used to work in the construction industry, but I quit during the pandemic. And I haven't wanted to go back. Honestly, personally, I haven't wanted to go back because I just didn't like I didn't like how easily I got laid off. And now I don't want to go back to like an industry that's gonna like I just felt like it's like dealing with someone with a constant temper tantrum. Like the whole industry, it was like every recession, everybody gets laid off, and I just can't handle it again. Like, because if the next recession comes and I get laid off again, I'm gonna be like, why didn't I quit while I had the chance? But I feel like even though it's really hard to do something like do a tenancy union, like a real tenant union. And put together money for a plot of land. I feel like it is really hard to do something like that but I also feel like people overestimate how hard it is because they just think it's impossible. But these things have already been done so many times, like this, like pooling of money for land trusts, or like, and it's not just money. Like, there's so many things that we could do. For example, like there's people that have land that don't have the money to build it up. Or there's people that have, like there's people that maybe they don't have money to give, but they have good credit. So they could put their name on a project, or like get a loan that other people could donate to. So I feel like once like the biggest hurdle is actually like creating some kind of union. And there's already a lot of like renter unions. Like in New York, like nearly like every building that's like NYCHA or Section 8 or whatever has some kind of tenant union. But it still remains kind of short-sightedly on the idea that the government is going to provide housing for us, and that we have to fight the government for them to provide housing for us. And I just feel like I support those efforts. I do. But I also have a libertarian leaning side a little bit, where I'm like, okay, but what can you do without the government? Like before, like when the government doesn't come to save you, when they don't have a public housing program, when they're not going to lower the rent, what are you going to do then? So like that, that's how I feel about it. I don't know how you feel about it, but
it kind of sounds like you're having almost like a land union instead of a renters union. It's like a land owning union.
Yeah. But I think the renter union is also very necessary.
Yeah, I think both are necessary. If you can come together to own land so that you can build up your own housing, that's great. But if you don't, at least there is a renter union.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think I think I'm down with that. I don't think there's an area where I necessarily disagree. So, I mean, shit, do it if you can.
Yeah, I wish I could, but I don't know what it would take to get people thinking that way.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about it. I mean, there's at least that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I got a big mouth, so I'm using that to my best of my ability. So, and if those of you who are watching, either live or in the rewatch, if you guys, either like this idea, put it in the comments down below, or reach out, or because I also put Lucy's Twitter in the description, but also share this on social media just so that it can spark some other ideas, because people, to be honest with you, some people have never even thought about this, and they may actually have the money to be able to do it. They may not have the credit, or they just may not have the knowledge. So yeah, I mean, you can do that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think like I used to kind of be the type of person that I'm like, okay, let me think of a plan and then try to charge ahead. And now I'm realizing like sometimes it's just better to kind of hash out ideas out loud, even though like not all of them will stick. But someone will have a better idea, that, or maybe an idea that complements your idea, or I don't know. It's like organizing is like it's really hard, and it's kind of a very long like process, and I don't even expect to be in charge of anything. I just like at this point I'm just like seeing what sticks to the wall. Like I'm just like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Okay. So here's the thing. And
oh, look, Robin Ryan. Know of such a place in the Dakotas now. Plans for building being discussed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Robin. Now here's the thing, and people like you and I are similar. We're what you call idea people. We don't always have to follow many different lanes. We just have to connect with people. Like, we're idea people, then you have execution people. Then you have people who are great at coordinating everything. So just because you may not know how to execute it, you put the idea out there that can help other people who can execute it to be able to, put it into action. So I think that you actually putting this out there is actually a very good thing, and that helps in the process, because there may be somebody who knows how to, who would know how to do something like this, but the idea just hasn't come to them yet. So, it's kind of like what Rome says: everybody has a place in the revolution. So I'm just saying. I mean,
well, I've been trying to, and he agreed yesterday to like bring. There's this guy I know that works for a nonprofit in my area, and they have a land trust in the Bronx. They have a land trust, and I think that it's worth supporting their land trust. If like, I don't know what stage they are in, if they've like acquired a building or not. I do know that it's not perfect because they do ask local politicians to pledge money. That's how they get some of the money for their land trust. So because of that, even though they're not really like pro-Democrat, they're still a little bit beholden to the local politicians after that, right? So like they don't really kind of like openly criticize local politicians if it doesn't I mean, they do. It's probably it's like the best organization I can think of in my area, and they still have, there's like limits on how much they can run their mouths because they're still they don't want to be divisive. But they do a lot of things like there are land trusts like all across the country, and they don't get enough support because we're still looking for someone to save us. Like that's like the problem with our politics. It's like we're looking for someone, and I think it is hard because like I've been to some of these like land trust meetings, and it's a very slow process. Sometimes it's like a 20-year process, and it's very slow, and it's just like seems like very bureaucratic and and it doesn't solve everyone's housing problems. So then people are like, well, why should I participate in this? It's not going to solve my housing problem. But I also think like that's why we should talk about it more and try to make it a little bit sexier, because like I really do think that if people can take money like $100 a month out of their pockets to donate to Bernie Sanders, and that guy raised $23 million, with that amount of money we could have housed, how many people can you house for $23 million? A lot. Permanently, by the way, not even like, yes, it won't solve everyone in the country's housing problems. It's not that much money at the end of the day, but it would have been better than putting all of those ads into Facebook, which is paying Facebook, by the way, which is already like a multi-billion-dollar company, for a campaign that didn't go anywhere. So like I like at this point, it's just like I see the wastefulness even in like well-intentioned actions, like the mutual aid stuff, and it kind of drives me nuts. Like it's not that people are badly intentioned. It's just that we're not really like using our money efficiently and our efforts efficiently. It's not even just about like a lack of money or a lack of effort or even like, a lack of good intention.
Yeah. You're talking about using some of the money for the long run, far down the line. I think there should be a mix of some of the, helping out people with their immediate needs, but also going far down the line and saying, okay, so let's start putting some of the money towards this, which will help you way down in the future so that you won't have to worry about this ever again. So it's basically using mutual aid as an investment so that it continues to help people, kind of almost like a residually over the years. I hope I explained that right.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, like, for example, it's not even that long term. Like, you could buy, let's say, like a 3-story house, like something that 2 families can live in. You could house like 8 people, let's say. Okay. And then as a condition of that, of them owning that house, you say, for example, you guys pledge, you have to pledge to, like, to have a garden in your backyard, like as a condition of you owning this home, like pay something forward for what, like, the community has given you. And that's how you start to, like, multiply these kinds of favors. You know what I mean? Like, you could make people, like, if you resolve someone's homelessness problem, it's easier for them to get a job.
Yeah,
it's easier for them to, like, fix other problems in their lives.
Yeah.
So, like, there is a point where you could say, look, you find a job, pay money into the whatever. It's not, like, my parents raised me, but when I got old enough to contribute, they charged me rent, and they charged me, and now I have to pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, nothing is free in life. Like, it's not like a pure generosity. This is, like, about pitching into the community, and then when they're able to, they have to give money back. It's not like free whatever. That's how I think about it. And maybe it's a little bit harsh, but
yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily even have to be that. It could be, what are you contributing to the household that keeps it running? Are you, making sure that things are clean? Are you do you know how to fix things? You can contribute that way until you can, contribute monetarily. Are you tending to, like, let's say you do have a house with a garden. Are you tending to the garden? I mean, it's just, sometimes it doesn't necessarily always have to be monetary, but it does help, but as long as you're contributing to the smaller part of that community in order for it to run properly, then yeah, I mean, that's your community responsibility. So I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with that, because the thing is that we have to depend on one another, and I think that's something that we have to do. It's basically, running a community should be like running a household, where it's like, okay, you do the dishes, you take out the trash,
right.
you vacuum the floor, you do, and the thing is, and it runs cohesively. But it's like, okay, can we switch? Okay, then you can switch, with this person, you can switch with that person, and make it that way. But I think we have to look at it like that, instead of always trying to put it all on one person. And I think that's one of the perils that we have within the system, is that it's so individualistic that it says everything must fall on you when it shouldn't. And then what about the people who can't
it's
do
like,
it
yeah,
all?
you have to be young and able-bodied and self-sufficient, and it's like all of these things don't come to you at the same point in your life. Like,
yeah,
like right now I'm able-bodied and able to work. At some point, maybe I'll be disabled and just be able to, like, donate a few bucks. That's it. So
yeah. So, I mean, some of us aren't able to do all that. So it's like, what do we do? So yeah, there's just some good things. If you don't mind, because I know we're approaching on almost 90 minutes. But I just wanted to ask you a couple questions about your perspective being in this space, if you don't mind.
Sure, no problem.
Okay. So as someone who is also an advocate for things like land trust, but also canceling student debt, things like that. If you don't mind my asking, like, how did you get in to this space, what was the driving force to bring you into this space? And have you always been on the left as far as what your opinions are concerned?
So well, I think the first time I uploaded a video, I was trolling Kyle Kalinske. I was not seriously intending on getting into any space. I just kind of like, I had some time on my hands because I wasn't working at the time because I got laid off like in 2020. And I saw this video of him. It was the one, it was the Anna Kasparian looking up the skirt. That was like a breaking point for not apparently not just for me, but for a lot of other people. But like, there's a breaking point every year or like every few months, but that was mine. I don't know. I think that triggered something in me. And the funny thing is that it really wasn't something that affects me that much. It was just like, I got annoyed that they were kind of twisting this feminism. Like Anna Kasparian is trying to twist. She basically is trying to twist feminism into like feminism for the upper crust, like women of TYT. And that really annoyed me. At the time, I was just like, and you know, they were talking about her skirt the whole time, and Syria, like the entire country, was like a side issue for them. I was just shocked by the way they were having that conversation. So I was just like, what's going on here, you know?
Yeah.
So for me, that was a breaking point, not in the sense that I didn't know that these people aren't perfect, but it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, wow, these people don't give a shit at all. Like, like they think that Anna Kasparian's skirt is more important than the entire country of Syria. Like that, like that's where we are. So I don't think I've always been on the left. No, I've never been on the right. I do think there was even like a point in my life, especially I think in my early 20s, where I thought that there was some kind of like moderate path to like, not because I considered myself a moderate, but because I was kind of apolitical at the time.
I got you.
But definitely my family, I would say, like, we're definitely left. Definitely left on things like, you know, not invading other countries or stuff like that. You know, definitely left on things like police brutality exists. Definitely not left on things like feminism or like cultural issues like Anna Kasparian's skirt. Like I would say, my family was definitely still a little bit like patriarchal, you know, like a lot of families, like definitely probably people in my family are probably still judgmental against gay people. I don't ask them like every day, like, you know, what do you think about this or that? And I'm lucky enough to be straight, so it's not like a freaking subject of conversation. But I can't imagine that like my family is completely accepting of every, you know, like kind of culturally liberal thing. And you know, like I would say this is pretty common. Like Hispanic families are very socially conservative, and mine was not even like socially conservative.
Black families
socially conservative as you can be. Like we were definitely left comparatively.
So, oh yeah, Black families are definitely socially conservative, and a lot of people just do not. A lot of people automatically assume, oh, you're Black because you know you guys must, you know, side with Democrats, and it's like a lot of Black people only side with Democrats only because they don't want to keep up appearances. But a lot of Black people, they actually agree more with the right, especially socially and culture wars, than the left. and a lot of people just don't realize it. So yeah.
Yeah, and I saw like TYT taking this terrible direction. Like, do you expect to bring like Muslim Americans into your movement by talking about Anna Kasparian's skirt? Like, this is just, it's not going to work objectively, realistically. You know, like I just feel like they're living in some kind of parallel reality. I'm not saying that it's great to be socially conservative or that, like, you know, we shouldn't try our best to, you know, help, you know, gay people, trans people, like people that are affected by like the like extreme conservatism of the church and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But I also know that like the churches in my area, like when there isn't some other kind of mutual aid, like mechanism, people go to the churches or to the mosques or like the synagogues or whatever for help.
Yeah.
And like, for example, at my church, like my church, there's like a gay priest, which is like a weird thing, but he doesn't say he's gay. But everybody knows he's gay. But like there's like kids living at the church, you know, like whose parents have gotten deported. Like he's taken in at least like 30 kids. So they're living at the church, right? And this is a church where like nobody's going to talk about he actually even talks a little bit, I have to give him credit, like about it in his sermons. It's like, oh, like one time he even mentioned like his sexuality doesn't matter. So I think he's actually like taking the church in kind of a more liberal direction. But at the end of the day, I feel like, why do people still keep going to the church? It's not because they're all completely on board the gay priest train, you know? Like maybe some of them appreciate his social liberalism, but not everyone at the church does. They keep going to the church because he is providing something of value to the entire community, like regardless of like their personal views on whatever. So like that's how I think about it. And I think like these channels like TYT and stuff, they just provide so little in terms of like help, like advocacy, whatever. They provide so little that nobody even cares about their socially liberal values. Like, I don't know, that like you know, and then they just kind of use this to like virtue signal about like, you know, TYT, they're like the biggest feminists over there, and they're just I don't know. to me it's been really like a failed experiment for them to
I would say that my friend to the show, Meg, she would probably call them fake feminists. That's what she would probably call them. Because speaking to real actual feminists, yeah, they would have condemned Anna Kasparian too. They would have been like, yeah, no, no, you're yeah, you're not real. And so yeah,
like if they really wanted to posture about these liberal values, right? Like I've read articles about how gay teenagers are like way more likely to be homeless because they're way more likely to get ostracized by their families. So they're actually way more likely to end up on the street. If TYT wanted to start some kind of homelessness aid, whatever, for gay teenagers, they could go ahead and do that. But they don't want to actually like provide, you know, anything substantial because like if you virtue signal for rich gay people, those people are still fine. They don't need your help. They don't need your money. And like that's the direction that those channels are going.
Look,
it seems like I hit a nerve there, right, JB?
I'm gonna get in trouble. the rich liberal gays get on my fucking nerves. Oh my God. Because these are the same ones that will sit there and tell you, just vote for more progressives. And they'll be like, oh, they'll be like, well, aren't you glad that we got Katani Brown Jackson, the first Black female Supreme Court justice? Or
Richie,
they'll be praising Pete Buttigieg. And I'm like, are you serious right now? Look, I can't pay my rent. Like, would I like to have a Black Supreme Court justice that's a female, that's a woman? Of course. But I want the right one. I don't want just anyone. Like, I don't want one that sides with corporations. Like, get the hell out of here. And they think just anything is good. And it's just like, no. Like, ask me about Obama. Go ahead, ask me about Obama. And when you ask me about Obama, you're not going to like what I have to say. Because the thing is that to me, Obama, Kamala Harris, Tim Scott, God, what's his name? Mr. Sleepy. Ben, I forgot. He was in the Trump administration. God, he always looked like he was asleep. But anyway, that motherfucker. Anyway, but they, like, I put them all together the same. Ben Carson, yes, thank you. Mr. Sleepy, you know, the seventh dwarf. He is always, he's always, you know, bashing, you know, Black people. But thing is who put them there in the first place? It was the duopoly, both parties, who we all basically work together for. So, you know, when it comes to a lot of the rich, snooty ass liberal gays that really don't give a shit about poor people, especially us poor gays who are either working or poor, they don't really care about us because they're the same ones that go, oh, honey, you chose your lifestyle, without realizing that it's not an individualistic issue, it's a systemic issue. They're the same ones that will look up and down at somebody that's trans, and if they're poor, well, they chose that lifestyle. So the thing is that it's like when it comes to queer people, a lot of the upper class, you know, PMC ones that basically bootlick off of people like Pete Buttigieg, like, you can miss me with that. Like, look, it's just like, because people will say, well, don't you have solidarity with them? It's like, when it comes to social issues, it's like, yeah, in a way, but at the same time, they're not looking for our liberation. They're trying to, you know, I mean, you can still look, you can still be gay and still be an oppressor. You can be gay and be an oligarch. You can still be that. And for those I have no respect for.
The Roman Empire, like I like to read about the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire, it's like interesting because homosexuality was allowed. But when you actually read about it, it's like, okay, homosexuality was allowed in the upper classes and only really among certain people. It was like allowed. And I feel like, okay, and this is, it gets even worse. Rich people were allowed use of their slaves, right? Use of their slaves. Like the Roman empires or whatever, the emperors were allowed to, they were pedophiles. Like they were pedophiles. They were allowed to be pedophiles. Mm-hmm. But regular people, like homosexuality in regular people was frowned upon, and homosexuality in women was like a no-no. So if you were a lesbian, it was like not really that much allowed. And if you were lower class, homosexuality was actually frowned on. So like when you read shit about like so, like there's a reason why so like if you think about it, there's a reason why like lower class people like like working people, homosexuality is not, it's like almost like a layover of this mentality where it's like, if you're wealthy, if you're whatever, you can have whatever morals you want. You can be socially liberal. Like everyone will accept you anyway because you have money. If you're working class, it's like, it's not the same rules. Like, you know, and even today where it's like, technically accepted, like more accepted than it used to be, to have your own personal life, whatever, to get married. It's still not totally like, I feel like, you know, people aren't really there yet. You know?
Yeah, a lot of people never were. You know, and a lot of it is also, some of it can be religious conditioning. Some of it is patriarchal conditioning. So yeah, that's just the nature of the beast. But another question that I wanted to ask, because I want to be cognizant of your energy and time,
You're
is
so sweet, JB. You're like the nicest person.
thank you. Okay? Yeah, I'm gonna go to this question. You're president of the United States, okay? President Lucy, and it is your inauguration day. What are the first 3 things that you would do as president within your first 100 days?
I mean, like, I always find these questions kind of weird because it's like,
I'm weird.
well, yeah. No, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, like, because like if I'm saying that like I don't really believe politicians will fix this for us, I don't think that if I became a politician, I would have some kind of magic solution.
I
You know?
get it. I get it. I'm just coming at it from a perspective of what policies are basically closer to your heart. If you could change some of these things, then what would you do? You know what I mean? That's basically what I'm coming at it from. I mean, but if
Yeah,
you're not,
no, I think like if definitely like I think it's the same things that other, maybe it's the same, maybe it's not, I don't know, maybe it's not the same things that other people want, but I think well, one thing is I really feel like we are kind of on the brink of environmental disaster. And like I'm not just saying that because of the amount of garbage I see in the Bronx, but it's just like the air smells bad. I'm asthmatic, and like I'm more asthmatic every year. And it, like I feel it getting worse, just like the air quality and stuff like that. I personally like, I feel like we really have to trend away from this whole like let's save the environment by buying green solar panels mentality. Or like AOC, for example, she came to the Bronx like and was like advertising at these tenant meetings like the Green New Deal. Like I don't think we need a Green New Deal. I think we just need to like stop bombing like half the world. Like just like pull back, stop investing in so many weapons, and just, you know, like if we need to build housing for the poor, I don't think we need to like overanalyze like how green our housing, you know what I mean? Like there's always this like, and you see this with like the yellow vest protests in France and stuff, how they were protesting against the increased gas prices. I think like the real unity isn't in this like Green New Deal stuff. It's like really in pulling back from these international wars and like global efforts to like butt our nose into other people's affairs and growing our own economy without like infecting it with like so much liberal brouhaha about how we can't house people because like it's not under the Green New Deal. And like what I realized after, because I actually sent that team comments, like back when I still thought that AOC was going to be a good candidate, which I no longer think. And they ignored my emails. They were like, I was like, this doesn't work. And what ended up happening was that the Green New Deal in New York City is being used as a privatization tool to basically use government subsidies to green public housing. And now a third of them are like on the chopping board to be privatized. So like a lot of these I really hope that we can kind of join with the right even in like protesting the increased price of gas, pulling back from some of these wars, and then really like investing in housing. Like housing is like still like the number one top issue in my area. Like people need housing. People don't have access to a home. And honestly, people aren't happy. Like people aren't happy when they're like unable to get married or like have a family or even be alone and like have your own fucking space. Like people aren't happy when they can't achieve these like like lifetime landmarks. Like it's not it's not fun to be on your mom's couch in your 30s. Like this is like I really think like as a country we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, that part. Yeah, but you're basically referring to building coalitions and basically meeting with people on your terms for the issues that you really care about.
Yeah, I think like people building coalitions for the things that they care about, and like I don't like. I think like a mistake is like we always think that other people are gonna be into whatever thing that we're into. So like there's a lot of like outrage on Twitter about like such and such person didn't support this or that. It bothers me when they're a politician and they don't support everyone because like as a politician you're supposed to represent all of your constituents, right? So if Nina Turner goes out there and she says like I'm pro BDS and then she flips and says I'm pro Israel, then that's a problem that she's not supporting everyone. But if it's like a random person that's not pro Israel, that's pro Israel or anti BDS and they want to help with some kind of local housing effort, they don't live in Israel, right? So it's like I don't know, like we can work together to like iron those things out locally if we had some kind of tenancy union or like some kind of thing. But the Democrats are already all up in there trying to like co-opt the ALU. So
yeah, there's a lot that's going on that I mean, working together from a class perspective is actually going to be beneficial for us in the long run because we may not always agree on everything, but if we can come together on some of these key issues, we can definitely make some major changes. And so I think I agree with that point.
I really do think at the end of the day, I do think that there's people that are like socially conservative that would donate to a homeless fund that benefits gay teenagers.
All right. So I'm going to trip some people out. And this is going to be weird to some people, but this is going to trip you out. I honestly believe that there's some people who economically would even be communist, but they will be socially conservative. I actually believe they exist. But people will be like, what? No way. Like, yeah, like economically, they're probably further left than I am. But socially, they're probably more conservative than me. And they exist. And the thing is they do believe in a system that is basically from the ground up. And what about other people? You know what I mean? So, I mean, we have to build these coalitions, with some people who we may not completely agree socially, and we can have that battle. But when it comes to economic issues, for everybody, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
I agree with you, JB. No, there's people that are like that. I mean, people like make fun of them too. They're like, oh, like these white leftists. Well, that's a real thing. There's people that, aren't like, don't fully think about or understand these like complex racial issues, but they're very economically left. They're, like, extremely. That's a thing, and they're very socially conservative. I feel like somebody that's like that on Twitter is a little Samira Khan. Like, she seems a little more socially conservative, and economically left. I don't know if I can even like minimize her to that, but like Caleb Maupin the other day, he was like saying something very similar. Like, I feel like people are like happier. Sex is in the. He said it. He was just like, sex is better in like the context of marriage. Is everybody happy that way? Maybe not. He believes that, right? And he's very economically left. So like, I don't. Like, the weird thing though is like, I feel like definitely like my parents, which I feel like the boomer generation, and they were the ones that were like trying to break away the boomers from this like intense social conservative like, and I can't say that struggle wasn't worth it, because I don't know how it was before like the boomers. But to me, people are veering like so far left with like the socially liberal stuff, to a point that it does kind of like, I just find it ridiculous. It doesn't bother me in the way that I'm like, okay, like these people are hopeless or anything like that. But like the other day, I literally saw some kind of media personality announce on Twitter, like, what's a gender inclusive way of saying ladies and gentlemen? Oh, and he said, serious question. What's a gender inclusive way of saying ladies and gentlemen? And in my head, I was just like, who cares? Like, I don't care. Like, maybe I should care. Maybe there's like something to be said for language, and I don't know. I can see both sides, because people have sat me down and say, look, like this has affected my life in this way. But on the face of it, when I see something like that, I'm like, this is not an explanation that has value to me. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah. To me, it's like, okay, it's fine if you're trying to be inclusive, not just rhetorically and optically, but you're also trying to be inclusive economically to help them.
Right.
If you're the type of person that wants to use that more inclusive language, and yet you're still stepping on the necks of them, what good is it? You know what I mean? It's just like, for instance, you'll have people who are liberal, who will say, trans rights are human rights, and yet they balk at having universal health care so that trans people can actually have gender reassignment surgery without having to use a GoFundMe in order to raise for it. It's like, do you really believe that? Or are you just saying it out your ass just so that you can win some social brownie points? Like, do you truly believe it? Then put your money where your mouth is. But they never do. And so that's my issue, is that they will use it's almost like a using of the language to co-opt, so that they can continue to use it to blind people, so that they don't actually help them in a more material way. So that's just what I come at it from. It's like, okay, you really think this matters? Okay, put your money where your mouth is and let's go. But they don't. It's just like what Elon Musk says. He talks about free speech. He doesn't believe in free speech. He's just telling you that because he wants you to simp for him while he buys Twitter. That's basically all it is. So, yeah.
There's like, when people say stuff like this, like you're making an announcement and acting like this is a very serious question, right? I just feel like they must know that they're trolling, right? Like, when I'm a troll on Twitter all the time, but when I'm trolling, I know I'm trolling. Like, I'm not pretending that I'm not trolling. I feel like that's why I like Jake B, because he's like a human teddy bear, and I'm like a human terror, but but we still get along. But anyway, like, they must know that this triggers the conservatives, and they want to do it. Like,
yeah,
it's, they're just doing the opposite of Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk, I think he's an asshole. He had that infamous
for that
one. He's definitely an asshole. He had that quote. He was like, when he wanted Bolivia's lithium, he was like, we will coup whoever we want. He was involved in that coup. Like, his dad owned a mine. Like, he never talks about the workers that, like, made his family's wealth. He grew up rich. Like, people act like he's some kind of self-made billionaire that gives you great stock advice, but like he didn't go from 0 to 100. He went from like 20 to 1. Like he already had like
he went from 95 to 100.
Yeah, and he, I mean, he's terrible, but like the reason people like him, unfortunately, like there's still people that like him, is because he's just kind of the opposite of like the rich liberals. Like he trolls them, and like people like it when he trolls them because it's funny. Like he's the one that came up with that meme. I support the current thing. I think that was Elon. Am I wrong? I think it was Elon.
I don't know.
So, because it's true, like liberals just jump on the next issue, and the issue right now is the Ukraine thing, the thing that they're jumping on. So he did that little meme with the logo that says "I support the current thing" with the Ukrainian flag, and it was funny. Like it was funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm not making excuses for Elon Musk, but I understand why people find him funny.
Mm-hmm.
And Cryptician is saying Captain Obvious. I don't know if that's for me, but anyway,
Captain Obvious said, "What? You don't believe Musk to be our free speech Twitter Jesus? Blasphemer!" Thanks, Captain Obvious. But that's what they were referring to. So
anyway, JB, I have one question for you. What's it been like to have your own channel versus doing this on the group channel? Like, do you feel like this has opened up new avenues of self-expression for you? Because like on your channel, you can say just like whatever the hell you want. And the other one, I'm not saying you can't like express yourself, but you probably have to like, coordinate more and stuff like this. Is it more fun? Which one's more fun?
I was kind of, I tried to gear it in a certain way on RBN. Here is just more, I think just a little bit more of my personality into my channel because it's my channel, right? And I don't have to consult anybody or
yeah.
I don't have to answer to a group on my own channel, which is a bit some freedom on here, but at the same time it's also great to be in community with people and have a cohesive group where you talk about particularly for us is a lot of Black issues. So I see benefits into both, because when you're in a group, then all the responsibility doesn't fall upon you, but then when you have your own channel, you have the freedom to do whatever you want, but all the responsibility still falls all on you. So there's benefits and disadvantages, but I kind of have both lanes right now. So, but I think having my own channel is fun because I get to have conversations with people like you. I had them with Kit Cabello. I had them with Robert Durden, Brianna Joy Gray. I had them with Rome. I had it with Savvy Sabs. I have all these different people on that I get to have conversations with, and I get to know them better. But also one of the goals of this channel also was to encourage more people to get into this space so that we can talk about it from different perspectives, so that people realize that they have more power than what they do. So
Yeah. I think like the benefits of a group is that like I feel like if I was INN is a group, but it's like very disparate. If I was like actually part of a group channel like RBN, like the benefit is that the channel, like there's multiple people propelling the channel forward.
Yeah.
The disadvantage I feel is like I feel like if I'm by myself, and that's why I like sometimes people contact me and they're like, you know, I want to talk about this or that, but like they feel shy or something. I'm like, just do it, just do a video, whatever, because if you're talking for yourself, it's like, and you also have the freedom to make mistakes. I feel like I'm not gonna have like the best view on everything, and I'm gonna make mistakes. So like if I do that on my own channel, it's like I'm not bringing down a group with like my shitty take. Like that's why I feel like things like TYT or like Rising whatever, they have like multiple anchors on the thing, and then it's like if they screw up, it's like the whole group kind of takes responsibility for that screw up, and then you're also socially pressured into like going along with the screw up even sometimes. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're correct in that. Is that, you know, you do have people that you can work off of. One of the things that hang on. One of the things that I in particular appreciate about being in a group is that it helped me to be consistent. One of the former members, Jackie, one of the things she taught me, and this was valuable information that I learned, is that your consistency is one of the best things for you. Being inconsistent can lead to a death of a channel. And so if anybody notices, if you watch RBN, and if you've been watching RBN ever since its inception, every single Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, what time is it? JB Show. It has been like that for the entire time. It has not changed. I may have, skipped one or two shows within a year, but outside of that, consistency. And having that knowledge and that training from RBN actually helped me to, when I started this channel. And having consistency, also being fairly good at thumbnails can also help too.
Oh yeah, I'm so lazy. I don't even make them. People are like, I had thumbnails in the beginning. I would like at least get a photo or something. And now I'm just like, no, this is a low tech effort. That's it.
Sometimes it's just too much.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's one of the things that I learned. Also, there are certain people who I noticed that they've had channels for quite a while, and their numbers aren't very consistently. They haven't gone up higher consistently. And part of me thinks that when it comes to the information and being knowledgeable, they have it. But personality-wise, it just doesn't translate into people wanting to watch them. Because the thing is, one thing I learned is that you have to have a combination of things. You have to be informative, but also at the same time, you also have to be somewhat entertaining. And I'm goofy as hell, so I got that there. So
You're in the expressions.
I wonder why the hell some of y'all watch me, but y'all do. Hey, look, it's your torture. Do whatever what you will, but yeah, I mean, it's just a combination of things that come into play when it comes to having your own channel. And so I'm grateful for it. God knows I am. But it's not easy as well because there's some things that I just do not like that would contribute to the growth of my channel even more. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. Like editing. Oh my God. Oh, I hate editing. I can't stand Lucy. I cannot stand editing. No. It's like, no, I do not. Look, HG Movie Maker, I just can't stand it. Why? Because it's so meticulous and time consuming.
It's very hard work. It's like a technical job. Yeah.
Hours and hours of work. I'm like, I have to clip all this, and then I have to clip this when I go my no, I don't want to do it. So that's why I just do live.
Yeah, like see, like yeah, I feel this like the way. Well, I mean, the way I think about it is like basically I do have a few donations on my site, but they basically pay for my StreamYard subscription and like lunch. That's it. I have to get ad blocker at least. I promise that I'm doing it this week. But beyond that, like the way I think about it is really like this is a part-time effort for me, not a full-time job.
Yeah.
So if it was to become a full-time job, then I would put the technical effort of a full-time job, things like clipping and editing and like making thumbnails and like sitting on Photoshop. I used to do that stuff actually. Like I used to have to do Photoshop on my job at my job. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. like
a little kid.
When it becomes a full-time job, I'll do it.
Please don't make me edit no more videos. No. I'll be good.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, like I feel and like the more energy too, like if you're in this for like connecting with other people and seeing like what ideas that we all have to like take this country forward, editing is not, or like me being on Photoshop is like it's more in the pursuit of the growth of my channel, which is not really what I'm looking for right now. Like if that makes sense.
I got you. Yeah. I'm not a very organized person. Surprise, people. I'm not a very organized person.
Are you on Twitch? Because Twitch is still painful, by the way, but it makes editing easier. You can like make clips really easily. I can show you how to do it.
But I don't want to like the editing. I just don't. This is why I barely post anything to my TikTok. Because I hate editing. Like, God. It's like I don't want to have somebody edit for me unless I can pay them a living wage. Because I just don't want to. And I know there's some people who are so kind and generous who want to just volunteer. But I'm like, I don't want you to contribute your time for free. I actually want to contribute to you, and I just can't do it. I mean, look at my coffee and my Patreon pages.
Like
that much.
I know there's a lot of like controversial opinions about outsourcing and how bad it is, but I think I don't know. Like if you're a Black-led network, you could maybe outsource some of it. Outsource to Kenya or like like somewhere where like the currency has a little bit more value and like I understand that people don't, but it is really like in the beginning like hard to like pay a living wage here. Like the dollar is the one of the most, not the most, but one of the most expensive global currencies. So
yeah.
Anyway.
So, but yeah, that was actually a really good question. I like how you turned the tables on me. Lucy's like, I got something for JB. I'm gonna get it this time.
No, I wasn't trying to get
you. Got me. You got me.
Okay. Well, I don't want to waste more of your time because we're already on 2 hours, and I said an hour and a half. But thank you so much for having me on, JB. I actually you're actually the connector because you're the person that brought me on in the first place. So like I want to thank you for that, and I think you're like the sweetest person
Thank you.
online.
Thank you. I appreciate
I'm
that.
not comfortable with such external affection. However, I really appreciate, like your very kind personality.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I appreciate that you keep it real.
All right.
And yeah, so have a great day. Thank you so much.
All
To
right.
have you on. I'm gonna continue on the stream just for a couple minutes to interact with
Okay.
my audience, but it was great having you. And yeah, keep up the good fight.
All right. Bye, JB.
All right, bye.
Okay.
Mhm.
Am I off now?
Not yet. Oh, there you go. So, that was a great discussion that lasted longer than I anticipated. Because I was, only going to do 90 minutes, but when the conversation is good, then you just keep going. Um, but yeah, she is on Twitter. I actually, Robin, I put her Twitter handle in the description as well. So if you can look there, there's a link to her Twitter. So you can go there as well as to her channel. So make sure to go there as well. But yeah, let me just go to the chat just to see what people were saying. And I saw that one about OnlyFans. Y'all don't think I didn't see it? I saw it. I saw it. I saw it, Bryce. Don't get me started. Had everybody looking all up in my goodies. Not my goodies, not my goodies, not my goodies. Now let me get. I'm not gonna start singing a Sierra song live on my stream right now. Cryptician says JB has some of the very best and informative and motivating conversations and interviews at RBN. Ah, man, thank you. Thank you so much. That means a lot. I really appreciate it. Yeah, but the funny thing is that the Gary Seth says U.S. government has the freedom to make the same mistakes over and over. But the problem is that they also can learn from those mistakes, and they refuse to because they have politicians that see the mistakes as benefits instead of what they really are, mistakes. And not even in mistakes, it's like intentional horrible things that they do. So I just got to say that. Cryptician says Blue Moon Red Wine is the latest of the greatest. Robin says the United States government always speaks to lessons learned. But my question inevitably comes when school is out and you act on what you learn. That is a good question. It's like you heard what I said, but are you listening? Because there's a lot of times where people will hear what you're saying, but they won't follow through on what was taught. Did you put proper application into what you learned? And the thing is that the United States knows what is going on. They're fully aware, but they haven't put proper application to the power that they hold because they want to abide by the power of the super rich and the oligarchs in this country because they don't want to abide by our power. Part of it is because there's not a fear of the people anymore. That fear went out the window. And so because they don't no longer have a fear of the people, they don't care about what you're upset or angry about. And the thing is that there's also no teeth behind it. The people, the working and poor people have been defanged over the years. Part of it is because a lot of times whenever we do have a movement and it has a figurehead behind it, they use them as an example by obliterating them. And then once that happens, it's basically, yeah, you see what happens to them? Don't mess with us. So basically, it was the U.S. government, but the U.S. government is being a tool used by oligarchy to say, yeah, you're not going to take our power away from us. We own you. And that's basically what the message is. And the only way we can take that power back, ooh, ooh, I know exactly where my sentence was about to go. I'm gonna leave it there. Um, oh, thank you so much. Robin says JB's charisma is downright magnetic. I don't know. I guess. Maybe. Uh, the hell. Thank you. I got to stop just like doing that. I think that's the issue that I have is when people say something nice, I downplay it. I think that's the issue that I have, and I've had it for years. Um, but I still have to keep reminding myself instead of rejecting it when somebody says something kind, just say thank you. So thank you. Yeah, the inferiority that I feel a lot is quite apparent, but yeah, I got to work on it. But we all have to work on something sometimes, right? Not every single one of us are perfect. I'm not the perfect specimen that I appear to be. You know, so that was a little jokey joke for you. Um, let's go. Captain Obvious says editing, huh? If if it let me say if it that bad, there must be some money in doing it for others. Shit, I got time. Maybe I should learn how. Anyone got an idea how to get started learning it as a skill? Yeah, the thing is that I mean, the only way that editing would be any value to me is if it made me significant amount of money. But even still, I would still dread doing it. I guess it's just because it's a very meticulous thing to do, and it's also very detail oriented, and I'm not a detail oriented person. So, but if you are, and if you're good at doing something like that, then yeah, get into editing, and people who actually do have the funds can probably pay you to do it. So, Robin says, I'd not encountered Lucy before. It's been a pleasure. Thanks. Oh, this is good. A good introduction. You can follow her channel. It's called Blue Moon Red Wine. That's one of the reasons why I put the title the way I did. I said the bluest of moons, the reddest of wines, because that's an homage to her channel. So that's why. You see, Cryptician says the value of the dollar is going down while the cost of its citizens using it is skyrocketing up. And a lot of times people are talking about the inflation. They're like, inflation's happening. Inflation. Um, is that part of it? It might be part of it, but I think a lot of it is just price gouging. You see, there's an economic ecosystem that's going on right now, and you have certain people who are very greedy, who their resource that they provide is something that drives the rest of everything else, namely oil. So these fossil fuel companies are saying, "Oh, we can make more money, so let's drive up the cost of our oil so that it will so that we can make more money." And in that, everybody else who has to use this energy resource has to end up raising their prices in order to in order to compensate for the commensurate rate of their energy rates going up. And so because of that, they're the price gouger, people who are being price gouged have to price gouge other people in order to make up for what they're losing. And so this is the capitalistic model that is being set forth. And so because of that capitalistic model, then you have people who are like me and many others who we can't afford it because we're basically poor. And so it leaves us out on the lurch. Even so much so that it's actually affecting governments, local and state governments, into raising their tax rates. So then now they're raising their property taxes, which raises rents on people like me because landlords want to raise their rents, either because they can't afford it or they still can't afford it, but they are making less profit, so they want to raise their rent prices. And so all these things continue to go up. And all it is just basically the price of greed because you're trying to operate a system that requires infinite growth on a planet with finite resources. And it's not sustainable. And so this is one of the reasons why you have so many people that want to basically overthrow the entire system. They want to change and remake the system anew because it's not sustainable and it's going to lead to the death of thousands, if not millions, of people. And we don't want that to happen. And so this is one of the reasons why you have a lot of people, particularly those of us who are millennial and younger, that are now becoming anti-capitalist because we're seeing the system for what it is and seeing how it is predatory and it is damaging not only to us, our mental, emotional, and physical state, as well as our environments as well. So that's one of the reasons why you have a lot of disdain for capitalism now among the younger generations, because capitalism has proven to be a clusterfuck. Isn't editing just learning how to use certain editing software? I literally know nothing about it, but I'm interested in all of a sudden. It is one part of it is learning how to use the software, but two, it's also time consuming to go through the editing because you have to literally go through a stream again. And unless you have particular markers, you have to know like where you're going to either do a break or you have to do some trimming. It's a lot. And so sometimes you have to literally go through the video in real time, which consumes time. So it's just more detail oriented. That's one of the reasons why. Mm. So, um, the thing is too, when I said there is money and I misspoke, money wouldn't be really my motive. I think if I could edit, okay, cool. Um, Bryce says After Effects is more creating effects as it started. Rain, waterfall, fire, lightning, etc. It is what it's good for. It also has animation tools for characters. Oh, oh, you're talking about editing software? Okay. All right. Okay. So, just, as something that I want to talk about, actually, let me share my screen really quick because I want to make sure that I cover this before we go because we were talking about housing. Um, and I think this is very important that people recognize what people are going through. Um, Let me hang on. Let me see, did I share this earlier? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to share this really quick so that you guys know what's going on with me. I'm feeling better, by the way, just to let you guys know, as you can see. But people need to realize like what is really going on, you know, with what we deal with. In a tweet, I said, I started to feel anxiety over my housing situation. My mom had to calm me down. The rent is going up the rent going up is such a troublesome thing. It's affecting me mentally. I almost started to panic. This system is too sick. This is actually, I think about a day and a half ago. Um, oh, thanks, Bryce. I see what you said. But this is what I've been dealing with. And people just do not realize how debilitating being housing insecure really is. To the point where I don't honestly know of anybody in this space that's in the same situation as me. Like anyone who is in, the independent media space that is literally on food stamps, right? Literally, how housing insecure. That's literally on a fixed income. I don't know anybody else in this space that is in my situation. And because of it, I don't want to leave this space, particularly because I feel like I can be a voice for those people. But here's the issue. I may end up having to get a job outside of this space. And if I were to even get a part-time job outside of this space, the JB show is done. This channel is over. And I am done with RBN. Like I can't do both. Because I literally go to dialysis 3 days a week, which means out of 7, the other 4 days I would have to work. And I wouldn't have the energy or time to be able to devote to a channel. So I think that's one of the reasons why I'm also trying to grow this channel so quickly, so that I can kind of supplement my income a little bit. But the raising of the rent and things like that, it's it's really tough. And so a lot of people who are somewhat dismissive of what we are going through, in a sense of all we need to do is just vote in more progressives. You can't just that's not the only answer. And to some people who, I'll be honest with you, I have a slight leaning towards electoral politics, but that slight leaning is more third party oriented. So I put it as like an 80-20 issue. 20% electoral, 80% direct action. Because basically that's the way it was back in the day in which we had actual change within the system. What the powers that be did was they realized that it worked. So then they diminished the amount of direct action that we did and said, okay, all you guys need to do is just vote. That's it. And so they've been on this campaign of just don't need to be out there as much. Just vote. We got this. When really, in turn, they know that they don't got it. And so they kind of put a damper on the direct action side of things. So much so to the point now where you have a lot of people who are treating certain politicians as messiahs, as heroes, as celebrities, even when they announce that they might run in the future again. And then if you say anything contrary to that idea, you're being a doomer. Or they might say that you're secretly a right-winger or something like that. when in turn you're saying, no, they are ineffectual. You have, if you're at least going to promote this, then put a gigantic effort behind direct action. You want to promote and uplift some of these people who are running with the Democratic Party, which I might add, some people who are running are very good people and very well intentioned. And like my buddy Sabby says, she's not talking about the people, she's talking about the party, right? So that's what I'm referring to. Some of them are very deeply well intentioned, but the thing is that that party just won't allow it. And so if you want to stand behind them, that's all fine and good as long as you are putting a heavy amount of, interest on direct action. That's what I think. I'm just giving my opinion here. And so if you do that, and I'm not just saying, oh, I'm for direction action, but you're literally promoting it on your show. You're promoting direct action and mutual aid. You're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're putting your hands and you're going into the trenches. Then yeah, okay. But just saying that you're for it, and once in a while talking about it, especially if you're able-bodied, you're doing a lot of this. You're doing a lot of talking. That's basically all you're doing. And like, for instance, the person who did the legwork for the ALU was people like Christian Smalls and many people around him, his, former Amazon, co-workers and contemporaries who made it happen. But who end up in the news getting the credit for the ALU? Three letters, one person. And so is it really fair? You know what I mean? Because they basically use the politicians in order to make this growth of this celebrity status. But has it really changed anything? A politician is only a means to an end. That's all they are. Now, if they are more friendly towards what we want to do, that's great. But we literally got a racist to sign the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. We scared them enough to get a racist to sign it. You don't think that we can actually scare Joe Biden enough to activate Section 1881A of the Social Security Act in order to give the entire nation health care during a pandemic? And by the way, yes, we're still in a pandemic. You don't think we can't do it? But the thing is that what they did was they kept killing direct action. Part of it being your money does not go as far as it used to. So therefore, you have to spend more hours at work, which means you have no time to do direct action. You just don't. And so there's so many different factors that come into it that push people out of it to the point where they feel like they have no recourse but to just vote. And so why do channels like this and Savvy Sabs and RBN and Heartlands Media and MCSC and all these other channels and the INN, why do these channels exist? Basically, we're putting you on notice that you have more power than you realize. And there are some of us that could help activate more people into direct action, even if it's just through conversation. So that's one of the reasons for channels like this. That's one of the reasons for, like for instance, my sister from another mister, Savvy Sabs, she talks about class a lot because a lot of times it's about class. They don't want you to have power. They don't want you to have a decent standard of living for every single person in this country. Why? Because here's how it works. All right, let me take this off. Get off me. Okay. If you have everyone, you have the rich and you have everybody else. If their decent standard of living goes up, then that means the overinflated standard of living of the rich goes down, which means an equalizing takes place. And the rich do not want that equalizing, that redistribution to take place. This is one of the reasons why they make it so that they take it and unbalance it back. Because if people start to realize that they have more power than they realize, then they just take it back, baby. And this is the fear, that we can actually take it back. It's like slaves learning how to read and write, right? It's like you have a plantation and you have the slave master, you have some of the overseers. Let's say the slave master and overseers amount to, let's say, 10 people. Let's say you have 50 slaves on a plantation. If those slaves do not know the power that they truly have, they're going to remain subject to that slave master and those overseers in time immemorial for forever. But once they start to be educated and learn, especially if one learns how to read and write, and then they start to teach the others, okay, so this is what things are. Did you know that we can do this, this, and that? Did you know that we have the access to these sites? Do you know we have access to these axes? We have access to machetes. We have access to crowbars. We have access to all these things. And we could actually, 5 people per person, 5 people can take down each one of the overseers and the slave master, and then we can take it over. And then we can influence other slaves at other plantations. But the thing is that once you start to learn that, then you realize you have more power than you do. That's when the oligarchs in this country, that's what they're afraid of. And why do they have so much power? Because they think that they're better than everybody else. They think that they're deserving of it. They think that because of their pedigree, that they should be able to determine what's best for everybody, even though they have absolutely no idea what we're going through. A lot of them have inherited their wealth. They've inherited, so therefore they've never had to deal with issues of being housing insecure. They don't know what it's like to have to apply for food stamps. They don't know what it's like to have to apply for Section 8. And you know what's crazy is some of them do know, and they forgot where they came from. Because they somehow think, well, I did it. I lifted myself up on my bootstraps. I actually went against the forces of gravity and were able to lift myself up off the ground by my shoelaces. So therefore, you should be able to do the same thing. Which is complete and utter bullshit, right? So they have this feeling that they're better, so therefore that they should determine. It's basically an aristocracy. So they feel like they should be able to, tell us how we should live. When really, a true freedom, a country with true freedom, means that the most disenfranchised have a decent standard of living. And really, the most disenfranchised should not be disenfranchised at all. That's how you know. And the thing is that once we take back that power, the disenfranchisement goes away. But this is what I've been dealing with, right? And people should not have to go through this. And many people have their health issues and their both mental health and physical health issues exacerbated by situations like this. If people suffer from things like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, among a host of other many different things, do you think that it's helped by being housing insecure? Do you think it's helped at all by being food insecure or not having access uh, to the healthy food that they should have? Or the environmental conditions of our water, the environmental conditions of our air, the environmental conditions of surrounding areas? Do you think that that's helped by this? And please do not come into my comments to say, oh, it's a choice that they made. It is a systemic problem which requires a systemic solution. Individualism will not save it. In fact, it was a systemic problem that caused the system to be where it's at. So therefore, it would require a systemic solution in order to fix it. Because the system was sick from the start. The system was sick when the Constitution was written basically for the benefit of white male landowners. The system was sick when we had slavery. The system was sick when when this country massacred, the indigenous people of this country. The system was sick when they, had basically the indentured servitude, basically, of Chinese people who were building our railroads. The system was sick when they put Japanese people in internment camps. The system was sick when they decided to do, medical experiments on Black people. The system was sick when they decided to start doing bans to people from Muslim countries. The system was sick when we decided to take, out the welfare programs. The system was sick when we decided to incarcerate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, 40% of which are Black people, and 25% of the entire prison population of the entire world is just in one country. The system is sick. And the system started out sick. And the thing is that we are the type of people, those of you that are watching, and those of many of us on the left, are the same people that look at this house and we're saying this house is dilapidated and was badly built. But we also see the potential that it has. And if we put in enough elbow grease, and if we put in, enough time and labor, then we can make this a house that is enjoyed by so many people. But you got the occupants that are on the top floor that do not want you to fix it at all, because they benefit from this house being as wrongly built as it is. I'm not going to say broken, because it was built wrong from the first place. So yeah, my housing situation hasn't changed. My housing situation never changed when Bill Clinton got into office. We were still poor then. My housing situation never changed when Obama came into office. I was still poor as shit then. My housing situation still hasn't changed even when Joe Biden came into office. I'm still poor as shit now. So, direct action, right? Use that direct action to push politicians into whatever way you want them to go. But be heavy on that direct action. The direct action is the muscle, right? Direct action is that muscle and that hammer that drives the nail being the politician. Because the politician is just this tiny little nail, right? Make the direct action the strong arm and the hammer. That's what it got to be. Because every single time we diminish the direct action, that hammer gets smaller and smaller and weaker and weaker. You try taking a little plastic toy hammer that they usually give to toddlers and try hammering in a nail. See how effective that will be. It might make a tiny little mark in the wall, but it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't do anything. But if you grow the direct action and you make it stronger and stronger and stronger, because you don't need to take the nail away. You just got to make the direct action big enough to drive that nail into the wall. Drive these politicians to do what you need them to do. But you got to make the action bigger. Some people may not agree with me. Who knows? Some people may say, get rid of the nail and just take that hammer and bust a hole in the wall. But yeah. Hey, Robin. Robin says, find the studs. You're looking at her, baby. Okay, I'm gonna stop. I'm so silly. I love y'all. Y'all are great. But yeah, so just continue to keep having these conversations, right? Continue to keep communicating with people, not just people who you agree with, but people who you may disagree with, in order to bring the rationale to them so that you can move them to your position. Because if you feel that your position is the most logical position, then a lot of people are smart. They will come to that conclusion. They will see exactly what it is, because a lot of us have done it. And so once you do that, then you'll be able to grow this. But yeah, so I've been going for quite a while. This stream lasted a lot longer than I anticipated. I am not editing the stream and clipping. I'm sorry. Sabs, I know what we talked about, but I can't do it. I can't. No, I gotta go. Look, continue to keep, leaving the world better than you found it. Water yourselves and water your plants. Smoke them if you got them. Eat them if you got them. And if you don't want to smoke or eat them, then guess what? Just sip some wine. Or if you don't want to do that, then have some orange juice. Something. Whatever. Something that makes your heart happy. That's what we're all about. Thank you to everybody who have contributed to my coffee as well as my Patreon. I have updated all the names in the list in the Chiron down below. Thank you so much to all the supporters. You guys have helped me so much greatly already. Also, just to let you guys know, I will be back next week, and I'm going to try to make clips out of this, but it is what it is, whatever, because Lucy did make some really good points, and I just want to thank her again for coming on the show. Very brilliant person to have on. Make sure to also, if you guys haven't liked this stream, then why don't you like me? Also, if you believe, if you don't believe that housing is a human right, then let me know in the comments down below as to why. But I do believe that housing is a human right. If you do believe housing is a human right, tell me why you believe that it's the right in the comments down below. And yeah, so I just want to say much love to all of you guys, and forehead kisses, mwah, because you deserve it, because you are you. Boop. All right, I love every single one of y'all. Deuces, I love you. Give me kisses.